Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Destination Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Adam Stoker. Today's episode is really, really fun. I had the opportunity, along with my co-host of my other podcast, Destination Discourse. His name is Stuart Butler. He and I, at the South Carolina Governor's Conference, were able to do a live episode of our show, Destination Discourse. We answered a lot of questions from the audience, and we had a great conversation. I think you guys will really benefit from hearing that discussion, and I think it'll help each of you in your individual destinations. So make sure that you tune in for the remainder of this episode. I think you'll enjoy this conversation. And I would love for you to check out that other show, Destination Discourse, because we have some incredible conversations. It's a little bit different than in this show, but I think you'll really enjoy how it all shakes out. Give it a listen.
Well, hello, my fine friends. Welcome back to Destination Discourse. I'm your host, Stuart Butler, joined today with Adam Stoker, who has read How to Win Friends and Influence People no less than 27 times.
What an intro. Can I tell you something interesting about that book?
Yeah, what's that?
Well, I just realized as I said that I'm thinking of a different book. So I was thinking The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and my dad actually contributed a little bit to that book, but it had absolutely nothing to do with how to win friends and influence people.
Yeah, that was a book that was written quite a ways back. You know why I say you've read that 27 times? I don't.
Why do you say that?
Once.
I haven't.
Because one of the secrets to winning friends and influencing people is saying their name. Like, you know, that's the magic word, and you do that to me all the time. So,
you know, Stuart, I think it's a sign of respect, admiration, disdain.
It's many covers many manner of sins for sure. Well, Adam, this is a special episode today. We're actually not going to be talking because we already talked. This is an episode where we're going to be playing a live session we just did at South Carolina Governor's Conference. So we just had that session a few days ago. We're pushing this out to our audience. I thought it went great. How did you think it went?
It was really fun. I actually enjoyed it a lot. I thought we had a great group, some great questions, and this process of kind of polling the audience that we do, where we ask for people's input and ask them to explain why they answered what they answered. To me, it's proven to be a really kind of fascinating way to lead a discussion at a conference, and I think we've had fun with it.
Yeah, it's great. And if you liked this episode and you want to get in on the action, then you have a chance to participate in our next live session, which is actually going to be coming up at the DI Marcom. So you want to plug that for us, Adam?
Yeah, so we're going to be in the Thursday session right after lunch from 1 p.m. to 2:05 p.m., and we're doing Destination Discourse Live, the uncomfortable truths about what's broken and what's next. Really excited.
So that's Thursday, February, 20-something?
Well, you didn't have to throw a numerical date at me. Let's see, the 26th. It's the 26th in Cleveland.
And I'm assuming there's tickets still available if you're listening to this before the 25th, you know, when the conference starts, or 24th, I think the actual conference starts. So,
you know, there was, but then they announced our session, and the rest of the tickets just sold out so quickly.
No, I think what you're finding is that everyone gave back their tickets, canceled them. They didn't want to see it. But no, come see us at Marcom. And if you're a Desti and you're in the audience, we'd love to chat with you during the session, but also come up afterwards. Adam really loves it when fans come and gush all over him. So he loves that.
Yeah, it happens all the time. At the grocery store, at the mall.
Yeah.
You know?
You had a couple come up to you after this one that we're about to play.
Yeah, there was a great group there. Obviously, very well educated, up to speed group because they clearly had already listened to the show.
Yeah. So I do have, before we play the show, I've got one more thing we need to bring up. Is that all right?
Okay. Sure.
So sometimes timing is it can create the illusion of things were said in a context that they weren't said. So I just want to clear the record because it didn't look great for you, I got to say, in the last episode that we published. So I don't know if you remember this.
You're going to have to narrow it down because that doesn't really narrow it down.
Yeah, well, So we had Eddie Kirsch on. It's the episode, if you remember, where I thought his name meant church in German. It actually meant cherry in German. So I looked like a fool in this episode.
One of my
We
favorite.
recorded this back in like early January, right?
Uh-huh.
Happened to come out this past week, which was a week after the Super Bowl. And right now there's this raging debate going on. And we're not going to get into the details and weigh in on that, but some folks really like the halftime show. Some people didn't like it. There are alternative programs that were put on. You made a throwaway comment in this episode about halftime shows maybe aren't always great. I just want to make sure the audience knows you are in no way referring to the Bad Bunny performance, because we actually recorded it before, unless, Adam, you want to come out now publicly and say you could see the future and you knew.
I had no way of knowing whether the Bad Bunny performance was going to be good or bad, and it definitely didn't. The comments I made didn't reflect anything about this year's halftime performance. There are halftime performances in the past that I have severely disliked, but it most definitely wasn't including this year.
Okay, well, good. Well, now we cleared this up, but we did not want Destination Discourse to get caught up in the hatred and the fire that's going on right now on social media. People are crazy.
And did you want to also apologize to the native German speakers who listened to the show for what you did?
You get about 1% of the listeners are Germans. I think I deserve any of the vitriol that comes my way from the German listeners because, yeah, I butchered their language. But that's okay. You've been butchering my language for your entire life, so that's okay.
That's a good point.
Well, without further ado, Adam, it's time to listen to the episode that was live at Gov Con. So enjoy.
In this live interactive session, Stuart Butler from Visit Myrtle Beach and Adam Stoker from Brand Revolt will bring their Destination Discourse podcast format to the stage for a candid conversation about what's really on people's minds. We'll start by asking the audience to vote on a series of questions. What's stressing you out? What's shifting in your community? What do you wish somebody would just say out loud already? Then they'll open it up. You'll hear how others are navigating the same issues, share what's working for you, and maybe even laugh a little along the way. No PowerPoints, no pressure, just a chance to be real about where we are and where we go from here. Let's welcome our panelists to the stage.
Well, hello, my fine friends. Welcome to this live edition of Destination Discourse. Raise of hands, this is really risky, Adam. How many of you guys have heard of the podcast Destination Discourse? Hey, that's not bad.
It's pretty good.
It's pretty good. So if you're familiar with it, you know the shtick. If you're not, we have really raw, honest conversations with some of the brightest folks in the industry. Obviously, that's not us. That's other people, the guests that come on the show. The bad news is today we started a little bit late, so we had to cut about 7 minutes of jokes. The bad news is you're going to miss some of my jokes. The good news is you're going to miss some of Adam's jokes, because they're not very good.
There it is.
Yeah. So today, you are going to be part of this session. This is going to be a conversation. This isn't us preaching at you for an hour. We're going to have dialogue. We're going to have real discourse. We may talk about some things that are uncomfortable, and that's okay. I think that's what we need right now in the industry. We need to have conversations with each other. There's threats coming from every angle. The world seems to be changing at an increasingly rapid rate. And so we're going to try to dig into a little bit of that today and hopefully learn something along the way. So as Adam mentioned, this is going to be participatory, mandatory participation, please. I'm just kidding. Pull out your cell phones, scan that QR code. It'll take you to a Mentimeter, and we're going to go along and we're going to ask some questions. You're going to tell us what you think, and then we're going to be, if you want to, you can participate. We're going to have a friend over here running around with a microphone, and you're going to get to share your opinions as well. Sound good? Everyone excited? Adam, you excited?
I can't imagine a better way to spend the last session of the day.
I mean, everyone's probably dragging. They're probably thinking about the award ceremony, right? And the alcohol. We should have just brought alcohol in here, and it would have been a lot more fun. But we can have fun without alcohol. It'll be fine. So, Adam, anything you want to say before we kick this off?
I'm excited to be here. You'll kind of see the shtick as we get going, but most importantly, I would love for everybody who's willing to participate, because it's going to be really helpful as we decide where to go with the conversation.
Yeah. The other good news about us having to cut it short, if you have listened to the podcast, there's a really bad jingle on it. We're a bit we do called Stu's News, so we're going to have to cut that, Adam, unfortunately.
It's kind of the best part of the show, but you'll have to listen to it to go hear it.
All right, let's kick off.
Let's do it. So I'm going to go ahead and read the questions. Stuart doesn't read good. So
That's true.
when tourism is working well,
I'm my noggin, it's my peepers, as Bob Simpson once said.
I'm just going to keep going.
Like I can read, but I can't read. If that. All jokes aside, I'm legally blind. I literally can't see. So this is either going to be the greatest session of this conference, or it's going to be a train wreck. Either way, you're going to be entertained. So Vanna White, take it away.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So when tourism is working well in your community, it's most visible through jobs and workforce stability. You can only choose one. Strong local businesses, tax revenue and public services, community pride and reputation, visitor volume and demand, investment in new or improved product, or it's usually invisible unless there's a problem.
I love this question. It's important. I think one of
He also wrote it. I just want to throw that out there.
Question.
Stuart wrote the question.
I have no favorites. They're all my children. I love this question because it's a question we don't pose enough, you know. In destination marketing, when the tourism economy is doing well in your market, all the hoteliers tell you how brilliant they are at marketing, right? But when it's going not so well, they come to the DMO and say, it's your fault that the tourism's down. So we just want to make sure we can all identify, what does success look like? How do we see the signals of success in our community? So let's see what you guys say.
So what I'm seeing right now is the top two by a long shot are community pride and reputation, and visitor volume and demand. And I'm wondering if we have a volunteer to start us off. It's brave to be the first one, okay? Who that talked about community pride and reputation? Visitor volume just took it over, so I'm going to switch it real quick. Who that selected visitor volume and demand is willing to talk a little bit about why that was the selection?
Raise your hand if you're brave enough. We have someone with a mic that's going to come to you guys. Anyone?
I know it's hard to be the first. Stuart will buy you a beer.
Not one person.
Right here.
Brave enough.
Right here.
Without the beer, I'll still go first. Good morning, everybody. Okay, so I picked visitor volume and demand. I feel like sometimes maybe special. I'm trying not to. I can hear myself.
It's okay. They need to hear you too. Like,
I apologize. I'll whisper. Anyway, I feel like a lot of us maybe come from small communities, small towns in South Carolina, but it's kind of hard to gauge like a metric. I know you can get like the feedback from the hotels and stuff like that, like how many like heads and beds and all that kind of fun stuff. But like we don't see that unless it comes to a meeting. So I think when you work at a place and someone comes in, they're like, oh, we got off 95, saw you on the internet, or we're just here driving through, we're snowbirding, we're doing whatever, we're visiting family in the family. Anyway. Or I grew up here and I haven't been back in like 50 years and I want to come back and see something. And when they come to you and you can have a little conversation, I think that gives you a really good metric that you're doing a good job, that someone wants to get off 95 and come see you. They want to come back after 50 years. They didn't like wash their hands of this town and never come back. You know, I think that's.
so would you say it's like a net promoter score would be a good way to measure that? Like people's positive attitude versus negative attitude?
Yes.
From residents? Yeah, I like this one a lot.
Well, although, sorry, but your answer was visitor volume and demand.
The other one, sorry.
Yes, because we are number 29. I mean, you could say community. I feel like a lot of it goes hand in hand. Like if you're a local and you live there and you're proud of where you are, you want to push it.
Okay.
But as a person who lives there, I see.
So heads in beds is the most important metric. And anyone else agree with that? Yeah, I'm not going to put you on the spot in the mic, but other people think heads in beds and that visitor volume is the metric.
I do want to have somebody talk about community pride and why that was selected as the second metric that's most important.
Who selected that one that's willing to talk?
Right here. And say your name when you...
Over here.
Yeah, one of you two there works great.
You can both talk after one after the other.
So I'm Kelly Barbary with Experience Columbia SC, and I picked that one because I feel like we have grown so much in Columbia in terms of the amount of coverage that we're getting, in terms of just the local pride aspect. Our ambassador program that we have has really taken off. And I feel like when things are going well, that those conversations, both locally as well as out of market, just give us a strong indicator that things are going well. And usually they do go hand in hand. Our visitor volume has continued to uptick along with that community pride. So, but I feel like the biggest indicator that's visible to the outside community, without going into our annual report, without going into the STAR report, is that kind of just positive feeling in the media and community conversations.
I love that. Will you actually pass the mic back? And I'd love for you to answer what your thoughts were as well.
Excuse me, Mark Beal with the Myrtle Beach Sports Center. A lot of my thoughts are very similar to hers, but I also feel like word of mouth is a huge piece. I think spending is inevitable. People are going to come to your town and spend. If you have a good reputation, that just means more people are going to want to attend. And I think that word of mouth just spreads throughout in our case, the sporting event community for youth and amateur sports.
Stuart, how do you feel about me arguing why it should be community pride and reputation, and you taking the other side?
You took the easy one. That's okay.
I'll take the other side.
Do it on the podcast.
I'm not scared. Are you scared?
No, you go for it. You go community pride. Let's hear it.
So the problem with just focusing on volume of visitation is ultimately there's a breaking point where your infrastructure is no longer capable of supporting that volume. And then you get into a lot of situations. I live in Utah. And so one of the things that happens in Utah is we've got 5 national parks in areas that have very little infrastructure to support it. So you get places like Moab where the locals hate tourism. And so there's this massive disconnect between tourism and the local community. And so the community pride side of things is really important. If you've got a really good, healthy tourism economy, which healthy doesn't always equal volume, healthy equals healthy for the quality of life for the residents. In that case, you're going to have that community pride and a much more welcoming culture and community ready to receive those visitors. And so to me, the health of the quality of life for the residents is probably a much more important metric than volume of visitation to a destination. The problem is we have competing incentives, because the incentives are structured in that we are held responsible to visitation volume, which causes a lot of the problems that we see in the space today.
Yeah, but I'll tell you the counter. So the visitation, heads and beds, is and always will be the number one metric, right? Because it's measurable, it's tangible, and it directly relates to tax collections. And at the end of the day, we receive funding from elected officials who want to see a return on their investment. You know, if I go to Columbia or I'm talking to our city council here, at the end of the day, they want to know if I'm spending dollars, what does it mean in terms of tax revenue back to the city? If that ever becomes negative, then we're all in risk of defunding. So that's why I would argue that visitation is the number one.
Tax revenue to what end?
Well, to make elected officials happy would be one answer to that. I actually don't agree with that. So our podcast, one of the shticks is we like to take the opposite sides of different conversations, just so we can be a little more rigorous in how we think about it. I think there's a lot of dogma in our industry. A lot of people assume that this is the truth or this is the way forward because it's always the way it's being done. And I think what we believe with Destination Discourse and what we believe at Visit Myrtle Beach is the world is changing a lot. In the old idiom that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different result, I think that's actually flipped. I think the definition of insanity today is doing the same thing and expecting the same result, because everything is actually changing so rapidly. For me, reality, I do think it's the other one, because when we see why do people travel, the number one reason people travel is to visit family and friends. If your local residents aren't proud of your destination, they're not going to be inviting people to come. They're not going to be spending money when they're here. They're not going to be taking them out to experience. So I think that's really important. And I think social media has fundamentally changed what word of mouth means. It's still the same psychological mechanism that drives people to do things, that fear of missing out and that social proof that someone else did something. And so I want to keep up with the Joneses. That's deeply rooted in our brains. Yeah. That's never going to change. So I think having positive sentiment on social media and through direct word of mouth is going to continue to be more important.
Anybody else want to chime in on that topic or contribute to the conversation?
What was the bottom one, Adam?
The bottom was it's usually invisible unless there's a problem, which is kind of like your internet, like your telecom company. You don't care about it until your internet's out.
That's
Right?
exactly right.
Go ahead. We've got somebody. Say your name when you.
I'm Allison with Visit York County.
Perfect.
And so I was one of the 29. Main reason being the public doesn't really see or understand tourism unless they see the physical bodies. So the visitor volume got it for that purpose.
Got it.
It's tangible, right?
Yeah.
It's hard to quantify sentiment unless you're polling. I believe every DMO in the world should be doing 3 surveys frequently throughout the year, not just once a year, but they should be doing frequently. We're guilty of this sometimes at Visit Myrtle Beach. But you should be talking to your staff. You should always be surveying your staff to see if they're happy and how, if you were at the keynote earlier, like that's going to become more important, especially with younger generations coming into the workforce. You should be surveying your visitors. What do they like about your destination? What do they not like about your destination? And understanding that net promoter score and measuring that over time. And then thirdly, you should always be measuring the sentiment of your residents. Everyone should be doing a resident sentiment survey frequently. If you don't do that, you can get caught out with like places like Barcelona have, where all of a sudden you have a vocal minority that becomes a majority in your town that turns anti-tourism. And that becomes really problematic. I don't know if you saw it on the news. There's literally residents in Barcelona running around with water guns, shooting people with water that are visitors. It's insane. And it's not the only example. So you gotta keep your finger on the pulse.
Yeah. Good to move on to the next question here. Go ahead. Look, I know we're keeping you busy. I'm so sorry.
It's getting a steps in today. Yeah.
I'll have one more thing I can add, and this is from a district marketing perspective where we, for strategies, we specialize right now with marketing to locals. And an interesting dichotomy we've had with our client King Street in Charleston has been the sentiment around locals not wanting to go to their district because it is so touristy. And yes, the tourists bring a lot of money to the area, and they have, very high or very low occupancy, empty occupancy rates. However, it's the sentiment around bringing locals and even, like local, restaurateurs who want that community feel of King Street that, it had maybe 20 years ago, has really dropped. And so we have been leveraging the King Street bid district account to kind of to have locals themselves tell the stories, whether it's business owners or merchants within the districts, but just the storytelling that is specifically speaking to locals and even can touch on the benefits of the tourism in the area versus just the downsides that the locals might experience, like traffic and all that kind of stuff. But getting locally created content that is driven at people, spending their time and money within the King Street district and getting excited about new businesses that are opening or new hotels that are opening and maybe the job opportunities that creates or the new opportunities that creates for the city as a whole has been kind of our bigger challenge there.
Yeah, great. You want to? I got some.
Go ahead. You go for it.
So I think one of the hardest things for DMOs is how do you blend the two, right? How do you get a meeting place where the residents and the visitors can coexist? It's really hard. Not many people have done it, but I think you're onto something. I think from my experience, the best way to do that is to stop thinking of the DMO as the hero of the story. Stop thinking of the destination of the hero of the story. Stop thinking about the people, both the residents and the visitors. And the more you can show the story through their eyes, then the more they're likely to emulate that behavior. So I think ambassador programs are great. I know Columbia has done some really good ambassador programs. Charleston has too. I think ambassador programs with locals are great. I would also encourage you to do ambassador programs with the visitors and then see if you can get them to collab and actually do stuff together. Just if you can emulate it and show people that experience, they're going to want to join in.
Great. Let's go to the next question. And I've put it up so most people have answered. I'll briefly go through this, but what poses the biggest threat to your local tourism economy right now? And I'm just going to say what the top two are: economic uncertainty and affordability pressures. We've got 27 people have responded to that. And then the one with 16 responses is public perception and community trust.
Interesting.
Who wants to raise their hand and say why they said what they said? And how about a hand for Kimberly for running around the room?
Kimberly's going to want to tap out at some point.
Hi, I'm Al Joseph, Georgetown, South Carolina. If number 3 had not been there, I would have chosen the economic uncertainty. But specifically where I am, the previous local administration has supported the DMO, has funded the DMO, big increases in the DMO budget every year. This past November election, and then January, we have an entirely new administration. I'm not saying that administration won't fund us, but it's saying the uncertainty of such a drastic change is concerning at this point. I'm submitting the largest budget that I've ever submitted for my DMO this year. And it's just uncertain and unsettling and concerning.
Yeah, definitely a risk, right? And I see this a lot, that economic uncertainty when it comes to visitation is a big thing. But if we can't get our funding secured, the visitation thing is almost secondary, because you're not going to be able to access visitation if you don't get that funding secured. So that absolutely makes sense why 13 people selected that one.
And visitation drives the revenue that pays for the marketing, right? It's a flywheel.
It's a flywheel, assuming that elected officials, when they come in and turn over, see it the same way when they come in.
And that funding thing, the risk is really interesting. When we started the podcast, it was one of the first topics we tackled. I think it was episode 3. We had a gentleman on, Will Seckham, who used to be the Dwayne Parrish of Florida, right? And so he ran their DMO, Visit Florida, and he told openly about this, but he lost his job because of one campaign that one elected official in particular didn't like. Now, in hindsight, it probably wasn't the best campaign to run, although it was pretty effective. He hired Pitbull, and they did a whole shtick on, it was sexy beaches is what it was. And they spent like $1 million to have this massive concert in Miami. And so risk is a real...
Why was that funny?
Why was what funny? The sexy beaches, I'll explain later.
Oh.
Is that okay? But the risk is one of our biggest threats, right? We think about risk all the time. It's one of the reasons we don't do things, right? It's easier for us to continue the status quo and to not ruffle feathers and not to alienate our elected officials. So we choose safe. That's historic. And I'm not just saying us in Myrtle Beach or us in South Carolina, DMOs in general. We'd like to play it safe because of the risk of defunding. I think the biggest risk right now is actually not taking a risk, not trying something new, because everything's changing. Like literally how people consume media is changing, how we do our jobs is changing, how people choose to go on vacation is changing. AI is so disruptive to the travel funnel that if we continue to play it safe, we're going to be obsolete.
Yeah,
instead of believe we're going to be defunded.
The status quo is a larger risk than what could possibly be on the other side of taking a risk and trying something different, which I've actually never seen that before in my career, that everything's changed so fast that the status quo is actually more dangerous than taking a risk because there could be a big failure on the other side.
And we're seeing that play out in Florida. Now, if you follow Florida politics or not, but they were really close this year. There's a big fad, especially at state legislators, to give the residents back some money in the form of usually property tax credits or rebates or discounts. Literally, I think there were a few votes away from defunding all DMOs in Florida and giving that money back to the residents in terms of property tax credits. It was close. They were nervous. That's a real threat.
Did anyone answer one of these in a way that we haven't discussed that you want to share why you said that?
Remind me the top one, Adam.
The top one is economic uncertainty and affordability pressures. The second one's workforce shortages and talent retention, funding and political uncertainty, rapid shifts in consumer behavior and technology, including AI, and public perception and community trust.
Anyone else want to dig into this one? We want to move on.
You want to move to the next one? Oh, go ahead.
This one right here.
Alberto with the Sheraton Convention Center. Welcome, Brian. I went with the work shortages as well as the talent retention. It was more about the talent retention aspect of that one. It's a tough thing in this market if you don't have more opportunities. We see that we grow them, but then obviously they go searching for, for growth. Over time, that obviously wears the foundation of the entire ecosystem. So that to me is one that is a threat that will always be looming, because I don't believe we're getting ahead of it yet. We haven't found that route.
I think you bring up a really important point, because if you think about what our biggest mechanism is to generate new visitation, according to Longwoods International, it's 55% of it is visiting friends and relatives. And so all these people come here and have this word of mouth is our biggest mechanism, right? But if people come here and they have a bad experience because we're understaffed and we don't have enough labor to take care of them and to have the infrastructure to support them, those bad experiences also spread like wildfire and become big problems for us, right? So I can see why that's a major, major threat, and why you at the convention center are probably selecting that as your...
And not just for us, but just all around, whether it's with restaurants or, hotels, etc. It's just not enough movement happening for that growth to come below, or opportunities to, again, find their hole within the structure of our society.
Yeah.
Without quickly thinking, okay, you know what, I got to go greener pastures somewhere else.
Yeah. Right. And now he's identified himself. If anyone has any issues with the facilities here this week, that you know who to talk to. But Alberto, thank you for hosting us. We appreciate you guys.
Thank you so much.
I do want to talk a little bit more about the economic uncertainty, because it sort of parlays into the workforce. I think the uncertainty happens when there's a lot that we can't predict, right? And we in Visit Myrtle Beach, we try to predict what our occupancy is going to be every year. And we have a model that's pretty accurate, about 95% accurate, about 6 months out. We feel comfortable. We know what's going to happen. But what we found over the last year or so, the volatility in stock market and things like inflation, gas prices, unemployment rates, and making it harder to triangulate that. And so when there's uncertainty and people aren't confident in knowing what the future holds, they tend to pull back. And what we're seeing right now is different than before, because the economic uncertainty, when we had it in 2001, we had it in 2009, is we saw everyone sort of slide down a chain scale. So people would still travel, but they'd be trade-offs, usually in the accommodations, right? If I usually was traveling upscale, I'd go down to mid-scale. If I was mid-scale, I'd go to economy. And if I was economy, I'd just fall out completely. That's not happening now. What we're seeing, and you've heard it a lot, I'm sure, is the K-shaped economy, right? There's the haves and the have-nots. There's a lot of really good data out there. Myrtle Beach is following this to a T. Our data is showing this, but it's national data that shows higher end, mid-scale and above hotels are doing this. They're doing pretty well. And then the independents and the economy hotels are sort of doing this in terms of occupancy. And one of the things we tested last year is we looked at, is rate having an impact on demand? 20 years ago, you could lower your rate, your average daily rate in a hotel, and you'd see demand spike. It was a direct correlation. That's not the case anymore. So it tells us something's going on differently with the consumer. So my hypothesis is that people no longer want to worry about the brand. They care about the experience. What I mean by that is I need to trust that the experience I'm going to have is worth the money I'm investing. I'm willing to invest money, but what that means is the brand Myrtle Beach or Charleston or Columbia or Greenville or Hilton Head or any of you guys isn't as valuable as the individual experiences, the moments that happen while you're in those destinations. And so this goes back to workforce. It goes back to all of this stuff. If people come and they don't experience a good product, they're probably going to post it on social media, which is going to have a negative effect. If they have a great experience, they're probably going to post it on social media, which now goes to their peers, and they're going to say, I want that. I'll give you a prime example of where I've seen this in reality with my own household. So I have two sons. One just turned 20, one is 17. In Florence, South Carolina, it's like an hour and a half away. One Saturday morning, we said to them, and this is like a year or so ago, we said, what do you want to do today? And they said, we want to go to the mall in Florence to go shopping. And I'm like, that doesn't sound like a 20-year-old and a 17-year-old boy would want to do on a Saturday morning. It turned out that on TikTok, there was this Chinese restaurant and the food court at the mall in Florence that if you went there, it would not just give you like a white container of noodles, it would overfill it so much and it would be falling out and you couldn't close the lid. But this had gone so viral on social media that they wanted to go do it, right? People want experiences. So if I was a hotelier right now and I have like a breakfast buffet or something like that, and I have a waffle machine, what I would do is I would encourage people to make the most outrageous waffles and have all the toppings. They wouldn't cost me a whole lot, but I would encourage people to go and post that. You know, there's a restaurant here in Myrtle Beach called National House of Pancakes, and it gets a ton of social media exposure. Bunch of people are complaining it's way too expensive, but there's a line outside the door every day because you get like tons of pancakes. When you order pancakes, it's like $40 for pancakes, but you get this ridiculous over the top amount, and certain people are willing to pay for that experience. So brand is less important than the experience today. So we've got to shift our roles as DMOs. We're no longer just marketers. We're also partly stewards of our community. We've got to educate our members or our constituents, our stakeholders, to make sure that they're investing in talent, they're investing in training, they're investing in product, they're investing in experience.
Yeah. We talk a lot on our show too about how involved should the DMOs be in the experience creation in the destination? Like how involved should the destination be in product development? We're not going to like spend 20 minutes on that in this discussion, but it's definitely worth a listen if you want to check some of those out on.
That's a shameless plug for the show, Adam.
That's what we're doing.
Okay.
Yeah. This year was a whirlwind. I was able to go to so many conferences and meet so many of you in person. It was such a wonderful experience, and I'm grateful for every event that had me come speak. It is something that I'm continuing to do. I've really enjoyed it, and I want to continue to be able to speak at events. My spring is already kind of filling up for next year, which is a little crazy. I've already got a wild all-night flight plan to get from one conference to another, but I really would like to be able to come to as many conferences as I can so that I can interact with each of you and be able to share some of the things that I've learned and that I'm seeing in the industry and where it's going. So if you have interest in having me attend one of your events, whether it's a governor's conference or if you're one of the major associations in the industry, let me know. I want to make sure that I get it on the calendar as early as possible, and I can't wait to see you all in person. Reach out to me, adam@thebrandrevolt.com, if you'd like me to come speak at your event.
You know, the one of the jokes we always make on the show,
he said
wait
for this.
One of the good jokes we make on the show is, you know, I'm on the light side because I'm a DMO, right? He's an evil vendor. He's on the dark side. So he's always hawking his wares. He's always trying to sell something.
We love this joke.
We do. We do.
Okay. So next question. We're just going to move on. So what's one tourism issue your community needs to talk about more honestly this year? And this one's open-ended. We want you guys to fill that out if you have any specific issues that you feel like are not being discussed in your community that need to be. And this is a little bit, the reason we created this show was to identify those things and have those discussions publicly that are usually happening after the board meeting with the two people in the parking lot before they get in the car, right? We want to have those conversations publicly. Decline in international demand, political polarization, highest and best use of tourism dollars collected. What else can folks do with older children? Residents' disdain for tourism and visitors. Foreign travel relations.
Wow, that's twice we've had that one.
Who wants to chime in on one of the things that they put here and share with us why that's a conversation that needs to happen more honestly? Anybody willing? Or is that why this is anonymous here, is because you don't want to?
These are the unsafe conversations.
Yeah. Homelessness and how it impacts perception. Different organizations pushing the same things, yet never working together. Decline of hotel product quality. More product development. Quality of product. Aging product, product development alignment. We're hearing a lot of the product development discussion we just had. Any of those, Stuart, you want to?
Yeah, I mean, we'll start with the one that came up twice to begin with. The international travel. I mean, it doesn't affect everyone equally, right? But I think it is important to recognize that this is, America 250 this year and SC 250. There's likely going to be a lot of folks coming for that. There's likely going to be a lot of folks coming for the the World Cup. Go England. Boo. And so I think there is opportunity. There's base camps. There's all around. I think we heard yesterday that there's at least a couple in North Carolina. There may be one or two in South Carolina. But these people, when they come to the World Cup especially, they want to travel. They're here for a month, usually, to follow the games, which are happening every few days. But I think there's an opportunity for us to get some of that business. So be targeting. Figure out who's playing near you. Who are the teams that are based near you and where are the teams playing, and try to target some of their folks. I think, obviously the elephant in the room right now is Canada. Canada's been a challenge. The nationally Canadian visitation is down about 40% last year. We're hoping it's a little higher this year. The conventional wisdom is it's because of the political rhetoric, right? It's because of some of the things that our president said that offended people. And that's certainly true for some Canadians. But we're about to celebrate Can-Am Days here, Canadian American Days. It's like our 65th, I think. Kimberly, you should know. You're a PR person. Is it 65th? Something like that. So we've been inviting Canadians here for 65 years. And we had a bunch that came last year in the middle of this. This was like March of last year. And we actually had the New York Times show up to do a hit piece about Canadian travel. It was kind of a little panic moment with our communications manager and me when we realized that they were showing up. But we ended up talking to these Canadians. And what we heard was, to start with, they talk a little bit about the political rhetoric. But then the more we talked to them, they're like, well, the exchange rate's not great. The Canadian economy is not that great. When we really peel back the onion, it was more economic than it was political. And back, it's just about 15 years ago now, when Brad Dean was the head of Visit Myrtle Beach, they commissioned a study to analyze Canadian visitation over time along with the Canadian exchange rate. And there's a 1-to-1 correlation, meaning as the exchange rate's favorable to Canadians, more are going to come to America. As it's less favorable, fewer. So I think, yes, the media is going to spin political rhetoric out of control, and that is true to a degree. The bigger problem is the economic incentives. And so what our strategy is, and what I think every DMO strategy is that's targeting Canadian travelers, is be present now, because every marketing class that's ever existed says that if you promote during a downturn, you're going to steal market share when it comes back, and it will come back. When the exchange rate levels back out and is more favorable to Canadians, they are going to show up. So be present, be friendly. South Carolina does that better than everyone else. There's a reason Canadians like to come to South Carolina. It's because we have the friendly faces and smiling faces, right? To use the old term.
I'm also a little worried about I feel like sometimes the political issue can be quicksand. And what I mean by that is, like, if you step in it, it could suck you all the way in, and you got to be really careful with that, because there are issues beyond politics that affect our visitation and our audiences all the time. And it's always changing. And the audience that was coming to your destination 20 years ago may not necessarily be the audience that you're attracting today. And the important thing is to recognize some of the evolution that's taking place and recognize where the opportunity is. And so every time you have a shift like that, for example, if international travelers have been a major, major portion of your visitor economy, it's also in a lot of cases probably priced out American travelers who would have come to your destination otherwise. So if you've been targeting luxury international travelers, instead of getting too caught up in what the political issues may be doing to affect your destination, instead, who are the new audiences we should pivot to and go after because one opportunity has diminished? And I think looking at it from that perspective, you're going to find new opportunities. Like I remember in 2008 when the Great Recession hit, staycation was like the most overused word in our industry, right? And we kind of all got sick of it, yet all of us took staycations ourselves, and the distance we were willing to travel definitely got smaller. And so we were marketing to people who we hadn't marketed to for a really long time. And so the caution that I would give everyone is, when we have situations like a change in international travel, instead of putting your foot in the quicksand and getting caught in the negative experience that can come from the change, look for the opportunity that's now opened up on the other side. And there always is one. And so make sure you pivot instead of getting caught in the quicksand.
Yeah, and I'd extend that beyond international travel. The same thing with the economy right now, right? Like go back to basics. Like,
Yeah.
Who are our travelers? Like who are your top markets historically? You know, Myrtle Beach over the last, let's say 5 years, we did pretty well recovering from COVID, and we started expanding our reach and gone as far west with direct flights to Denver now. And, you know, we've seen some really good uplift in places like Chicago. But you better believe, because of the uncertainty right now and because fewer people are traveling, we pulled some of that marketing back in more recently. We're targeting North Carolina a lot heavier than we used to. You know, actually, there was a period in COVID where we really pulled out, not all completely, but we reduced dramatically marketing in North Carolina, even though it's our number one state in terms of visitation, but we didn't need it because the demand was there. So I think Adam's point is great. It's like you sort of go back and fish where the fish are. I said you were right. That might be the first time. We've done 70 episodes of this show, and that might be the first time I've ever said you were right. What's this dissertation right here? Someone wait novel.
Being honest with municipalities, federal government about visitor experiences in their parks and on their trails. How to collaborate to improve access and experiences with minimum funding.
I love this one. Collaboration, if anyone's from Myrtle Beach, you've heard this word a lot, but collaboration is the key to success in this sort of shifting turmoil that we're going through. I think the closer your DMO is with your Chamber of Commerce, if they're separate, with your Economic Development Corporation, even with your Association of Realtors, but especially with your elected officials. If you're not on a team with those guys, you better get on a team. Brad Dean, I'm going to call him out again. He used to have a saying that if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And that's never been truer than it is today. And so find a seat at that table with the folks, the power brokers in your destination. If there isn't a seat available, go set a new table that's bigger and invite them to join you. But if you are trying to do this as an isolationist right now, you're going to fail. You will lose funding. You will not have success. So we have to be radical collaborators with our entire community. And I'd also recommend doing that with your residents too. Set up a resident advisory committee and listen to them. We need to listen more than we talk in the destination marketing world. I really do think the role of a DMO is evolving. I don't know what it's evolving to, but I think what we've got to do is identify who are the power structures in our community and who's performing what tasks, because every community is slightly different. Where are the gaps and what is our role in there? We're not always going to be the leader. Sometimes we'll be a convener. Sometimes we'll be an assistant. But we got to make sure those gaps, things like product development that was mentioned a lot here, is being taken care of. Workforce is being taken care of. It might not be us taking care of it, but as stewards of our destination, we got to make sure those things are being taken care of. And if no one else is doing it, then we need to step up.
Yeah. I want to connect a couple of the dots that we've talked about as well. So number one, earlier we talked about the importance of taking a risk, right? And that it's more dangerous to stay in the status quo than it is to take a risk. The other thing that you need to make sure of is if you haven't built a coalition of supporters in your community, it's risky to take a risk. And so we're telling you have to take a risk, but in order to take a risk, you also have to build a coalition of supporters that actually believe in your vision of what you're trying to do and where you're trying to go. So this concept of collaboration, really, really critical for everybody involved.
Yeah, we're actually going to be speaking at DI Marcom in a couple of weeks. And one of the questions we're asking there is, if you were defunded tomorrow, who would come to your defense? If you can't answer that question, or if you're struggling to answer that question, there's a problem. You need to form a moat around your defensive moat of supporters and advocates. Because if you go to elected officials one-on-one, they're going to listen a little bit. But if you go and your board goes, and the economic development group goes, and the chamber goes and says, no, this is too important, we can't let this happen, then you're going to be in a much more defensible position. You've got to know who your supporters are.
All right, last question here. For the sake of time, we need to get to this one. In one word, what capability will matter most for our industry to succeed in what's coming next? AI, collaboration?
And you can cheat and put two words if you really want to. It does work.
Video, advocacy, trust, adaptability, evolution. Everything's moving around so much.
Yeah, the bigger they are, the more people put it. Is that
what
doing? Okay.
Frugality.
You read these big ones.
Trust, authenticity,
Very related.
flexibility. Marketing. So I want to talk a little bit about adaptability. I believe that when consumer behavior is changing at the rate that it is, and we're talking about with AI, the fastest adopted technology in human history, adaptability may become one of the most important traits in order for anyone to succeed in our space. And one of the things that we've talked about a lot on our show is the importance of making sure that everybody is valued for how they think, not just what they do. And that means going from a tactician to a strategist. Because with AI and the rise of AI, there's going to be a commoditization of tactics. Agents will be able to do a lot of the monotonous parts of your job, a lot of the things that don't take a lot of brain power, but take a lot of time. That's going to get chewed up by AI. That's where that speaker made a sound, and I thought somebody was right behind me. And so I think it's really, really important that when we think about being adaptable and the evolution that needs to take place for each of us, how are we making sure that we're spending our time on how we think, and that our boss or our board or anybody that's evaluating us is evaluating us on how we think, not what we do. And if you make that transition individually, your organization should also be able to make that transition and be evaluated for the strategy that you're implementing, not just the tactics.
So I got a little straw poll here to sort of illustrate one of the challenges that DMOs have, and it's related to adversity to risk that we've already talked about, all right? And so I used to work for an agency. I was on the dark side like Adam, and we work with online retail stores. And they were doing very sophisticated marketing. And then I moved and we started focusing on hotels, primarily independent hotels. And I felt like I was stepping back in time about 5 years in terms of the level of sophistication of the marketing. And I realize how bad this sounds, what I'm about to say, but when I went from hotels to DMOs, I felt in some ways as an industry with 5 years behind that. And so I'm going to straw poll you guys. How many of you have an AI policy? Okay, I hear I'm working on one. How long's AI been out in a meaningful way? When did ChatGPT hit? It's like 3.5 years.
Yeah.
Right? We as an industry, and I'm not calling you out individually because 90% of DMOs don't even have an AI policy. In 3.5 years. That's pretty slow, guys. We got to do better. How many of you guys are using AI daily at this point? Keep your hands up if you're using AI more than just making yourself sound smarter in emails. Your hands went down. How many of you guys are using agentic AI? How many of you guys know what agentic AI is, right? So here's the problem.
What is that? That's perfect.
Right? Here's the problem. Like there's literally a headline that I texted to Adam last week. It was a tweet. And it said, in 24 hours, someone had created an AI social media channel. It was just for AI agents. They'd taken it over. They'd invented their own language. They were plotting to kill humans. And there was over 1 million AI agents on this social platform within 24 hours. Now, that was hyperbolic. It was sensational. It wasn't quite true. But we are on the cusp of something crazy. And in September of this year, I think it's going to be a watershed moment. Apple just signed a deal with Google. You know, Apple's been promising a good Siri that didn't just set alarms and play music for like 5 years. But now they've signed a deal where Gemini, Google's AI, is actually going to power Siri. It's going to roll out in September with the iOS update. That's a game-changing moment because this device is no longer not just going to be able to set alarms and turn on your lights. It's actually going to become a really intelligent assistant that can help you navigate your life, book your travel, and do a lot of other things. So if DMOs aren't ahead of that, we're going to get caught out, you know? In a world where I can say, hey, I want to go for a trip to Myrtle Beach. I'm traveling with my kids. We want to go in September. We're not too sure about the dates. We want to check out Carolina Opry, and we want to go to Pirates Voyage and see some live music. and it can go do all the research and come back with recommendations, and I can say, okay, go ahead and book that. We're a few months away from that being a reality for the majority of consumers. In that scenario, what role does the DMO website play? How important is website traffic in that reality? Yeah, it's not. So we gotta educate ourselves. Number one, if we're gonna be agile, we gotta have knowledge. You gotta have an AI policy. You gotta get your team embracing AI. The way we did it at Visit Myrtle Beach is we had a stand-up meeting with the marketing team every week. And at the beginning, when this was first starting 2.5 years ago, we said, how did you use AI this week in a new, novel way? And we asked everyone in the room, and everyone would suggest, and then we'd see each other bounce off each other, say, oh, that's great, I can do that, right? And then gradually we phased that out because we didn't need to, because the team had embraced it. But we need to do more. We need to educate our team, we need to educate ourselves, because adaptability, I agree, is going to be the most important.
I heard a rumor that the first 7 weeks of that was you refining your headshots and just saying, oh, I use this technology to make you look better here.
Sounds like me. You want to pick another one?
So, and we've got about 5 minutes left, so I'd almost rather get to if there's anything anybody wants to ask a question about or talk about, instead of us just talking for the last 5 minutes.
On.
Yeah. So is there anything that we've said or anything that we haven't said that somebody would like to have an open discussion about?
I love pushback. If anyone disagrees with something,
pushback on Stuart. He apparently loves it.
Yeah, I really do. Right over here.
I would like to hear y'all's thoughts. I know you talked about an education piece of people who are already in the industry, but I think as a whole, CVBs, DMOs at the start did not do a very good job educating the world, the nation, their state, their city, their town, what it is that they do. So many of us, before we begin a conversation, we spend educating them what it is we do in the industry. I'm sure a lot of people in this room didn't know the industry existed until they somehow landed in the role that they're in. And you're like, wow, I'm so glad I happened upon this industry. So students not understanding what the industry does, workforce issues, right? Getting knowledge out there about what a CVB and DMO do to then grow the workforce, right? And get everyone understanding what it is we do, that they would have such buy-in if they just understood. It's like the language in bills that they pass. There's all these different components that I think as a whole, how do we educate what it is we do?
Stuart and I disagree on this topic a little bit, or at least we have on the show several times. The principle that you're outlining, I think we agree on, that we need to educate everyone on what we do, because if our purpose is to build a better life for the residents of the community, if they have no idea we're the ones that contributed to that, then how will they value it, right? And how will we protect our funding and stay relevant? I really believe that DMOs should do more local messaging, intentional local messaging. The place where we disagree is how much budget should be spent on that local messaging, right? And so even if you're not going to spend media dollars, I think it's really, really important that at a minimum, you have a major PR campaign in your community on a consistent basis to demonstrate all the ways that the DMO is contributing to the local economy. And see, that bleeds into community pride. That bleeds into so many other things. And the way I kind of simplify it is our residents should be one of the target personas that we actively market to and communicate with intentionally. And it depends specifically in your community what you need them to know. But I think that is one of the most underperformed activities in our space, is actually communicating the value of what we've done to the community we serve.
Yeah, they call it marketing the marketing. And I actually agree more than I disagree. Where I disagree is I don't want to end up in jail, so I don't want to spend taxpayers' dollars promoting in market, right? So restrictions. One tip that I picked up at the conference last year, which I love, is when you're negotiating a media buy with someone that has local media and national media, right? You're negotiating, let's say it's iHeartRadio or Cumulus or whoever it is, right? You negotiate a buy for the visitor audience, negotiate in a value add to hit your local audience. because then you're not spending taxpayers' dollars to actually talk to those folks. But I do agree we should be talking more for not just us. I think the most effective way to talk to our residents and our elected official is through our members and our stakeholders. The stories of the florist that gets a ton of business when there's a convention, right? Or the restaurant that sees tons of sports teams coming in the off season. Those are the stories that will really impact the elected officials.
Awesome.
You want to do the shameless plug?
Yeah, I think we've got time for one final question. Scan the QR code if you want to listen to the show and subscribe to it on your phone.
Or if you want to be on the show, we invite, it's an open invitation. If you have something you want to say, a burning question or something that we talked about today you'd like to unpack, open invitation.
We've got a few previous guests in the room today even,
right.
so you can hear some of your peers on there. Anybody else have a question or comment?
Yeah, right here.
Micah.
Excuse me. Whoa. That was a reach. Hi, I'm Micah Decker with the Old English District Tourism Commission. And I've heard both of you, I'm a listener of the show, but I've heard both of you talk about the future of the DMO website, but not a whole lot here right now. So I was wondering if you guys could maybe banter some on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think
we have 2 minutes.
Our opinion has evolved.
Right, like that.
If you listen to some of the earlier episodes, what you would have heard is the DMO website is obsolete in 2 years. That was the definitive claim that I made. I think now, I do think we're on trajectory for the DMO website to be completely irrelevant at some point in the future. I think humans will be the determining factor of how long that is. And I actually have begun to believe that it will take longer than 2 years now. So it's not a question of if, I think it's a question of when. I just think adoption is going to be slower. Human adoption is going to be a little slower. But I think it's less relevant today than it was a year ago. And I think it'll be less relevant in another year. I think the data, the content, the information that is contained within the website will become way more important. We have to become, and we saw up on there, we saw trust and authenticity. I think content, we are the destination storytellers. Like that's one of our roles as DMOs and CPBs. And so I think it's critical for us to be the source of truth for information that's out there in the large language models, the AI agents for our destination. And so we have to double down on content. We have to go build an army of content creators that are writing and doing audio and video about our destination. And it needs to be first person perspective, experiential driven, unique stuff. The Expedias, the Googles of the world, the TripAdvisors as well, know about our destination. They know all the sort of top level stuff. We don't need to be writing about that. It exists. What we need to be doing is telling individualized stories that'll cater to an individual that's on an AI agent saying, hey, I've got a family of 4 and I'm on a budget and I really like seafood in whatever specifics. We need to create content for each individual that way.
Yeah.
Content is going to be more important. The website less.
I'll give you really simple, and then I know we need to wrap from there. I'll give you short term, medium term, long term. Okay. Short term, right now, everybody's website who is a glorified directory, basically, that website is essentially worthless today. It might be feeding Google when people are making searches. So other than that, if you're using just a templated glorified directory, it's already kind of a waste at this point. In the medium term, we're going to need to figure out how to get consumers' attention and keep it. And that's one of the reasons that I've been a big proponent of creating content, owned content that's meaningful, but our websites are not conducive to housing that content. And so it's going to be really critical for us to figure out how to have that content on our site in a meaningful way that actually makes it a sticky experience for the visitor to inspire them ultimately to go through to actually book a trip. In the long term, all the content and data that we've built for our website is going to work more like a repository of data that the LLMs are going to pull from in order for agents to pull decision-making information and things like that. And the website will no longer function like a consumer face to the website like it does today, right? And so that's short, medium, long term. In my opinion, I could totally be wrong, but the way I see it today, no matter what, this idea of just this directory and the way we communicate our value to our stakeholders is, hey, I sent you this many clicks this month. Like that's that's gone. That ended a long time ago, actually. So that's my thoughts on it.
Thank you guys for when this is going to be published in
Couple weeks. Yeah. If you haven't heard of CMO Jam yet, honestly, where have you been? This has been one of the coolest things I've ever had the opportunity to be a part of. In August, we brought together 12 of the most brilliant marketing minds in the destination marketing industry, and we were able to talk through the challenges, difficulties, but also wins and successes, and we talked about the future of destination marketing. We talked about the impact that AI is going to have in our industry, and it was such an amazing opportunity to spend an entire day with some of our brightest peers and watch them interact and discuss the challenges that they're going through on a daily basis and how every destination marketer can plan for the future. CMO Jam was a massive hit, and it's now being released as episodes. You can find them on Brand Revolt's YouTube channel. You can find them on Tourism IQ. I've shared the link to them on my LinkedIn, and I can't wait for you to see what happened at CMO Jam. Give it a listen.